Fragments of us. In the vibrant heart of São Paulo, where the pulse of samba reverberates through the streets and murals grace the walls, two young women once danced on the precipice of love and life. Their stories intertwined like the vines that climbed the old buildings, fragrant with the scent of the jasmine blooms that filled the air. Luisa, a dedicated college student, was a dreamer with ambitions that spanned beyond the skyline. Her days were spent at the university, surrounded by books on sociology and the rhythms of revolution. Every afternoon, she was lost in her thoughts as she strolled through the bustling markets, her heart beating in time to the lively sounds around her. The world felt full of possibility, especially whenever she caught sight of Clara. Clara was a free spirit, a vibrant artist with a soul colored by the intensity of life. She had dropped out of college, trading structured lectures for wild nights filled with vivacious music and creativity, but those nights began to blur with a darker reality. Her passion for art twisted into something more sinister as she drifted into the underbelly of São Paulo, seeking solace in substances that offered temporary escape, but left painful voids behind. When they met at a local bistro, the spark between them ignited an unforgettable summer. They spent lazy afternoons wandering through Ibirapuera Park, their fingers intertwined as they lay on the grass, dreaming about their futures and what they meant to each other. Luisa saw the beauty in Clara's chaotic spirit, and Clara adored Luisa's determination and grounded nature. They were two mismatched pieces of a puzzle, effortlessly fitting together yet constantly challenged by the outside world. As weeks turned into months, Luisa began to notice the shifts in Clara. The vibrant colors of her art had faded, replaced by frantic strokes that reflected despair more than joy. Clara started to withdraw more frequently, spending nights in places Luisa could hardly bear to imagine. Each morning, Luisa would awaken, anxiously waiting for a text that sometimes came and other times didn't. Deep down, she feared the inevitable, a world without her beloved Clara. Determined to save her, Luisa tried everything she could think of. She planned interventions, speaking softly about hopes and dreams, about the love they shared and the future that awaited them both. She visited Clara in the darker neighborhoods, where the air felt thick with desperation. Each time she approached her, Luisa held tightly to the warmth of their past, desperately trying to pull Clara away from the grips of addiction and the influences that darkened her once sparkling spirit. "Clara, please, remember the summer we chased the stars. You painted the moon for me." Luisa pleaded one rainy evening, tears spilling as they sat on the dusty steps of an old building, its graffiti whispering tales of dreams long forgotten. Clara looked hollow, her vibrant spark dimmed. "That was before, Luisa. Before everything fell apart. Those stars don't shine for me anymore," she said, her voice faint and shaky. "Your light doesn't dim. It only flickers, waiting for a breath to bring it back to life," Luisa insisted, reaching out to wipe a tear from Clara's cheek. "Let's find that light again together." But addiction had wrapped its claws deeper around Clara, manifesting in a cycle of fleeting highs and crushing lows. Each attempt from Luisa birthed more heartache, as Clara slipped further into that world where love seemed too far to grasp. Luisa's heart ached as she watched the woman she loved dissolve before her eyes, consumed by demons that whispered false promises. After many bruised nights, Luisa finally realized she couldn't save Clara from herself. The weight of her love began to feel like a burden, one she could no longer carry without losing herself entirely. The vibrant street art and the vibrant life they had shared faded into a bittersweet memory. Clara's world spiraled further. Friends became shadows and moments of clarity were fleeting. One cold night, under the glow of the streetlights, Luisa made a choice driven by both love and self-preservation. She stood outside, hope and desperation swirling in her heart. Finding Clara amongst the gloom, she reached out one last time. "I'll love you no matter what, but I need to take care of myself too," she murmured, glancing at Clara, who stood wavering like a fragile tree in a storm. "I can't lose myself in this darkness." In that moment, each realized they were standing at a crossroads. Clara's tearful eyes reflected a deep understanding of what they both faced. "I'll always love you, Luisa. Maybe I just need to find my way back first," she whispered, her voice trembling. And with that, Luisa walked away, heart heavy but resolute. Months passed, and though the pain lingered like a ghost, Louisa poured herself into her studies. She transformed her heartache into strength, composing essays not just about social issues but about love and loss, the lessons learned from Clara. Meanwhile, Clara began a slow journey of self-discovery, addressing her addictions and the tumultuous relationship she had with substances. The road was long, but small moments of clarity began to break through the haze. In time, both women found themselves in different places, but love had woven their paths forever together. They knew, perhaps one day, they might find each other again, not as broken shells of their former selves but as vibrant, fully realized souls who had fought their battles. The streets of São Paulo, painted with bold colors, echoed their stories, a love that endured through struggles, reminding them both that even in the wake of loss, the beauty of human connection resonates. In each mural they passed, they saw fragments of each other, remnants of the love and laughter that once filled their days. And every step they took, whether apart or together in spirit, whispered one undeniable truth: love, in all its forms, can be both incredibly beautiful and heartbreakingly complex. As the months slipped by, Louisa's resolve grew stronger. She excelled at university, channeling her heartbreak into powerful essays and community activism aimed at supporting those affected by addiction in São Paulo. The city, with its sprawling neighborhoods and vibrant life, served both as a backdrop for Louisa's dreams and a reminder of what had become of Clara. But for Clara, the darkness continued to deepen. Caught in a web of addiction, she found herself associating with people who moved in shadows, making choices she never thought she would. It wasn't long before her life took a dangerous turn. Lost in desperation to feed her addiction, Clara began to participate in petty crime, acts that spiraled quickly into something much more perilous. The thrill of adrenaline overtook her once lost creative spirit, as she found herself involved in a robbery gone wrong. One fateful night, Clara and her companions planned a scheme to rob a small convenience store on the outskirts of a rough neighborhood. The plan was simple, but as the moment of truth approached, everything unraveled. Tension crackled in the air as mistakes were made, and in the panic, a gun was drawn. Shots rang out in a whirlwind of chaos, echoing through the narrow streets. The sounds of sirens soon followed. Clara, in a frenzy, fled the scene, but with unbearable weight in her heart, knowing she had failed Danny, one of her accomplices, who lay critically injured on the floor of the store. Guilt tightened its grip around her as she heard the sirens grow closer. In that moment of terror, Clara hit rock bottom. But it wasn't just her own turmoil that loomed. Louisa's world was about to shatter once more. Louisa received the news the next day. Clara had been hospitalized after being apprehended by the police while attempting to escape. Her mind raced as she rushed to the emergency room, memories of their laughter and shared dreams flooding her thoughts. The sterile scent of antiseptic and the overwhelming silence of the hospital felt like a cruel reminder of how fragile life could be. Inside the hospital, Clara lay unconscious, bruised and bandaged, a stark contrast to the vibrant girl Louisa remembered. As her heart raced, she sank into the plastic chair beside Clara's bed, overwhelmed with emotions. Louisa held Clara's hand, praying for her to wake, to come back to the light that had drawn them together in the first place. Days turned into an agonizing blur of waiting, punctuated by the sounds of machines and the occasional whispered greetings of doctors as they checked on Clara's progress. They told Louisa stories of Clara's injuries, physical and mental, that would take time to heal. Mental health, they explained cautiously, needed just as much attention as her physical wounds. While Louisa camped out in Clara's hospital room, she began to realize that Clara's addiction had traversed beyond mere choices. It was a deep-seated escape from her own demons. She poured her love into Clara, even as darkness swirled around them. "I won't give up on you," she whispered every chance she got. But life had more trials in store. Clara's legal troubles escalated swiftly after her release from the hospital. Facing charges of robbery and substantial prison time weighed heavily on them both. Louisa, determined not to let Clara slip through the cracks of the justice system, began to delve into advocacy work for restorative justice, learning about programs that work to rehabilitate rather than simply punish. "Maybe this can save you," Louisa told Clara during one of their heartfelt conversations as Clara recovered at home, still fragile and haunted. "You can tell your story. We can fight together. Clara looked at Louisa with a mix of gratitude and despair. What if I'm not strong enough, Louisa? What if I end up in prison? What if I lose you along the way? The weight of her fears cast a shadow on the hope they were trying to build. I will always be here, Louisa promised, her voice unwavering. But you have to want this too. And with those words, they began to navigate the rocky road toward healing together. As the court date approached, Clara's anxiety escalated. Louisa stood by her side, attending every hearing, actively fighting for leniency based on Clara's struggles with addiction and mental health. They gathered testimonials from community members, painting a picture of a young woman caught in an abyss, but willing to fight her way back to life. It was exhausting, and sometimes it felt like a battle against the world itself. Finally, the day of reckoning arrived. Clara stood in courtroom shackles, remorse etched on her face, while Louisa watched from the gallery. The judge listened as they made their case, the drug rehabilitation programs Clara committed to, her willingness to speak out about addiction, and the support system surrounding her. After what felt like an eternity, the judge delivered a verdict: probation, with an emphasis on therapy and community service. Relief flooded Louisa as tears streamed down Clara's face. The weight of the world felt momentarily lifted, but they both knew that the journey toward recovery was just beginning. In the weeks that followed, as Clara attended rehab sessions, and they worked through the trauma together, a bond forged through adversity blossomed into something incredibly beautiful. They painted together in the sunlight streaming through Louisa's small apartment, each brushstroke symbolizing their resilience. Clara began to teach Louisa how to express herself through art, the colors on canvas reflecting their hopes and dreams. However, the journey continued to be tumultuous. There were nights when cravings would claw at Clara, and shadows of doubt crept back in. Louisa often found herself standing on the edge of despair, terrified of losing Claire again. Yet, hand in hand, they faced those crushing moments. With every small victory, they layered their canvases with the colors of hope, a fierce and unyielding love. Time and healing worked their magic, and Clara's life slowly began to reshape. She became an advocate for those fighting the same battles, sharing her story with raw honesty, her art transforming into a catalyst for connection and healing. One evening, as they stood on Louisa's small balcony, the bustling city alive with music below, Clara looked at Louisa, her heart full of gratitude. "You never stopped believing in me," she said softly, her eyes gleaming with emotion. "I don't know where I'd be without you." Louisa turned to Clara, her heart swelling. "We saved each other," she affirmed, knowing that their love had been the thread weaving them through darkness and into the light. The vibrant city of Sao Paulo pulsed around them, a symbol of their journey, filled with life, art, and the promise of renewal. In their embrace, they found solace. They had weathered the storm, and while the scars would remain, they wore them as reminders of their strength, knowing that together, they could face whatever life tossed their way. And with each sunrise, they embraced a new day full of hope, love, and the beautiful intricacies of an imperfect but resilient life. As Clara settled into her journey of recovery and reconciliation, the vibrant energy of Sao Paulo began to pulse through her, filling the empty spaces that addiction had stolen. But healing was not a linear path, shadows still loomed in the corners, and Clara found herself continuously battling the whispers of her past. Months passed and Clara started attending support groups for those recovering from addiction. Among the faces she encountered, there was one in particular that caught her eye, a young man named Lucas. A former street artist and notorious figure in the darker corners of the city, Lucas had his own battles with substance abuse, but seemed to radiate an undeniable charisma. He was a complex mix of charm and danger, a man who had danced along both sides of the law. The chemistry was palpable, and despite her efforts to focus solely on her recovery, Clara felt drawn to him. They shared conversations that flowed like graffiti on the walls of Sao Paulo, spontaneous bursts of laughter and passion intertwined with moments of vulnerability and confessions. Lucas spoke about his life in the slum neighborhoods, about the art he created under the cover of night, and the dreams he once held before addiction claimed them. "Sometimes, I feel like I'm still trapped in a shadow," he confessed to Clara one evening as they sat on the steps of a derelict building, the city lights twinkling like stars scattered across a velvet sky. "But then I see you, and I wonder if there's still hope for guys like me. Clara felt a pull toward Lucas, a kindred spirit, trapped in the same cycle of addiction, yet desperate to find their way out. As weeks went by, they grew closer, often creating art together. Their canvases became a tapestry of their intertwined struggles and aspirations. But with Lucas's world came a dangerous edge. He was still involved with gang connections that used his art for profit, threading Clara back into a life she had worked so hard to escape. The tight-knit bond Clara shared with Louisa remained strong, but it was strained by her growing relationship with Lucas. Louisa, now fully immersed in her college life, working tirelessly as an intern for a nonprofit, found herself worried. She could see how Clara was reopening wounds she was still healing. One night, when Clara excitedly shared the news that she and Lucas were collaborating on a new mural, a vibrant piece addressing the struggle for redemption, Louisa's heart sank. Clara's excitement was contagious, yet it stirred insecurities deep within Louisa. "I just want to make sure you're safe," she said gently, concern wrapping around her words. "I know how easily things can spiral, especially with Lucas involved." "Louisa, I'm okay. I promise," Clara replied, a mix of defiance and desperation in her eyes. "Lucas understands my fight. He gets it in a way that maybe you can't because you weren't there." The unspoken words lingered heavily in the air, that Louisa could never fully grasp the dark places Clara had wandered. Despite her worries, Louisa respected Clara's autonomy. She had fought so hard for her freedom, and Louisa understood that this part of Clara's journey was hers alone to embark upon. But as the weeks unfolded, the excitement of art was overshadowed by Lucas's increasingly reckless behavior. He still hung out with the gang, made choices that danced dangerously close to the line of legality, and dragged Clara along with him. One day, Clara arrived breathless at Louisa's apartment, her hair disheveled and eyes wide with a mixture of exhilaration and fear. "You will never guess what just happened." "What, Clara?" Louisa asked, trying to keep the worry from her voice. "I helped Lucas with a wall mural last night, right in the heart of the city, the kind that'll put us back on the map." Clara exclaimed, but the gleam in her eyes dulled as she mentioned about breaking into an old warehouse to paint there, which belonged to a rival gang. "It was exhilarating, Louisa. But we got chased out by some guys with bats." Louisa's heart sank, an ominous chill creeping through her. "Clara, that's dangerous. You can't ignore the risks. What if something happened to you?" "I survived, didn't I?" "It was thrilling," Clara replied, her voice full of bravado but trembling underneath, grappling with the thrill of living on the edge versus the warmth of the safe life she had started to carve for herself. Days turned into a spiraling mix of thrilling highs and sobering lows. Clara and Lucas became embroiled in the chaotic nightlife of Sao Paulo, and their mural projects turned into chaotic excursions. One late night, as Clara returned from a party, she found herself in a confrontation with members of a rival gang. The heated words escalated, and Clara felt the blood drain from her face as she recognized some of the faces from her past, people who had once been friends, but had become shadows of her former life. In the chaos that unfolded, Lucas attempted to protect her, but things escalated quickly. Gunshots rang out just as Clara instinctively ducked, finding herself caught in the crossfire between gangs. She fell amid the debris, adrenaline surging through her as the terror of her surroundings sunk in. Rushed to the emergency room with Lucas by her side, Clara's heart raced not just from the adrenaline, but from the reality of what had just unfolded. She had narrowly escaped with her life, but the image of violence chased her as she spiraled into uncertainty. Meanwhile, Louisa paced the waiting room, anxiety gripping her heart. When she saw Clara, pale and shaken, clutching Lucas's hand for support, her heart split in two. "What the hell happened?" she demanded, the worry of 1,000 sleepless nights pouring out in her voice. "It's fine, Louisa. We got caught in something, but I'm okay." Clara protested, but Louisa could see the fear behind her bravado. "Fine. You're in a hospital. This isn't fine." Louisa snapped, anger out of sheer worry spilling over until she turned toward Lucas. "What were you thinking, bringing her into this?" Lucas, often the charming rogue with the gift of smooth words, fell silent under Luisa's passionate gaze, the weight of realization dawning on him. I thought I was protecting her, he murmured, regret and guilt etched into his features. Protecting her? This was reckless. Luisa shot back, her voice cracking. Clara had fought so hard to reclaim her life, but here she was, entangled once again in a spiral of chaos. As Clara sat on the hospital bed, she felt torn between two worlds, the dark allure of danger and the steadfast love of Luisa. You both mean everything to me, she cried out, looking between them, panic rising. I don't want to lose either of you. In that emotionally charged moment, Clara realized the complex tangle of her heart. She loved Lucas for the understanding he provided in her darkest moments, yet her deep, undeniable bond with Luisa brought her the stability she desperately needed. The pull of danger excited her, but Luisa held the promise of a better future. The incident became a turning point, one that shook Clara to her core, and pushed her to truly reflect on the direction of her life. As she healed from the immediate aftermath, a clarity shone through. Lucas was a beautiful distraction, but he was also a reminder of a life that could lead her back to the depths of despair. As the days wore on and Clara spent more time with Luisa, she began to push away from Lucas's intoxicating pull. I can't do this anymore, Lucas. I need to focus on my recovery, Clara admitted one evening as they sat together in her apartment, the city alive with sounds just outside their window. I'm not asking you to give up on me. I want you by my side, he pleaded, desperation coating his words. But Clara felt the shift, the nagging voice warning her that love, in this case, might not be enough. I can't be dragged back into the darkness, she whispered, her voice trembling. I need to breathe and breathe deeply. The weight of her decision pressed upon her, but Clara felt a sense of liberation as she moved toward a brighter future. With every step, she felt Luisa's supportive hand beside her. They began to paint new murals together, not just in the streets, but within themselves, brightening the canvas of their lives with colors of hope, resilience, and revival. However, Lucas didn't take kindly to Clara's choice, feeling abandoned and angry. Tensions began to build, and Clara found herself facing the repercussions of not only her choices, but of her past entanglements. One fateful night, Clara was grabbed unexpectedly from behind as she left a cafe with Luisa. Lucas confronted her, rage and desperation spreading across his face. You think you can just walk away from me? After everything we've been through? Lucas. Please, just listen, Clara implored, her heart racing. But he shook his head, his emotions spiraling. They don't care about you the way I do. You're trying to run from who you really are. Before she could respond, a group of Lucas's gang members stepped in, the tension in the air magnifying. You wanna play games, Lucas? You can't let her walk away. This is about loyalty, one of them growled, the threat hanging thick like a storm cloud that threatened to burst. Luisa stepped in front of Clara instinctively, protective instincts lighting up her heart. You don't have to do this, Lucas. It doesn't have to end like this, she pleaded, her voice steady even as her heart raced. The scene escalated, emotions boiling over until voices clashed against the backdrop of the São Paulo sky, echoing through the night. Clara felt the walls closing around her, squeezing the air from her lungs. In that escalated moment of confrontation, the weight of choices made and lives intertwined suffocated her. But as the tension reached a precipice, something within Clara ignited. She stepped forward, her voice unwavering, stop. I refuse to be part of this cycle anymore. I choose love, not violence. I am reclaiming my life. In that instant the chaos paused. Clara's voice cut through the darkness like a knife. It was raw, filled with the weight of past mistakes and the fierce promise of a brighter path ahead. The men hesitated as she turned to Luisa, eyes bright with determination. Let's leave. Together. With that, they turned away, and against the backdrop of looming threats, they walked away, leaving behind the ghost of a life that had tried to consume them. The streets stretched out before them, and in the distance, the vibrant city illuminated the dawn. Clara and Luisa stood hand in hand, knowing they had faced the fury of their worlds only to rise stronger. They had fought through storms and chaos to discover the essence of love, deep, raw, and transformative. In that redemption, Clara realized she could love without being consumed, and while Lucas had shown her a side of life she couldn't forget, she understood the power of choice. She chose life, color, and the love that blossomed in the most unexpected places. And so they moved forward, Louisa and Clara, intertwined in their journey, painting their own masterpiece on the canvas of life, proving that love triumphed over darkness, and that self-discovery was the greatest art form of all. As Clara and Louisa walked away from the confrontation with Lucas, they felt the weight of the night hanging heavy in the air. Both of them knew that the decision to step away from the chaos would not come without consequences. The neon lights of São Paulo twinkled in the distance, embodying a beauty that seemed incongruent with the darkness brewing beneath. Days passed as Clara and Louisa tried to cultivate a new chapter in their lives away from the dangers that lingered at the edges of their existence. They created art together in safer spaces, attending community workshops that sought to heal the scars of addiction and violence. But as Clara seized the opportunity to rebuild, the undercurrents of gang rivalry pulled Lucas deeper into the fray. The gang to which Lucas belonged was embroiled in a long-standing feud with a rival group led by a notorious figure known as Tigre. In the shadows, Tigre and his crew trafficked drugs and controlled the flow of illegal activity throughout the neighborhood. Lucas had become restless after his split with Clara. He fell back in with old allies, caught between loyalty and a simmering desire for revenge. As the tension escalated, so did the violence. Rumors spread in hushed whispers across the streets, warning of an impending showdown. Clara, unaware of how quickly the world she had tried to escape was closing in on her, focused on her art, hoping to inspire others like her to reclaim their lives. One fateful evening, as she and Louisa headed to a local art show where they planned to display their mural about recovery, a sense of foreboding hung thick in the air. The city felt alive but dangerously electric, crackling with unresolved conflicts. The venue was a colorful converted warehouse filled with aspiring artists, musicians, and a hopeful atmosphere. Yet, in the back of Clara's mind, she couldn't shake the dread from the previous night's threats. In the middle of the exhibit, as their mural was unveiled, a stunning depiction of intertwined figures representing struggle, recovery, and love, the noise of gunfire erupted outside. The sounds reverberated through the venue, an ominous symphony of chaos disrupting the vibrant celebration. Instinctively, the crowd surged toward the exits, hearts racing as panic set in. Clara and Louisa glanced at each other, both of them paralyzed for a moment as they processed the danger that loomed outside. They raced toward the nearest exit, anxiety spurring them on as the distant cries of confusion echoed behind them. Outside, the street erupted into chaos. A fierce gunfight broke out between Lucas's gang and Tigre's crew, bullets ricocheting off the walls, the sharp sound echoing in the alleys. Clara and Louisa ducked behind a parked car, breathless and terrified, adrenaline coursing through their veins. "We need to get out of here, now," Louisa shouted, her voice barely rising above the cacophony. But as they tried to escape, they heard a shout followed by another round of gunfire, the crack of gunshots causing Clara to freeze. Among the chaos, Lucas had positioned himself nearby, drawn back into the violent underbelly he had tried to escape. Clara caught a glimpse of him, determination in his eyes, standing side by side with his gang, vastly outnumbered. The flicker of hope sparked in Clara's heart, mixed with dread. She wanted to run to him but knew the danger was too great. "Clara, we can't stay here." Louisa pulled her arm desperately, urging her to move, but Clara's gaze was fixed on the chaos unfolding. In a flash, everything went sideways. A gunman from Tigre's gang spotted Lucas and opened fire. The sickening sound of a bullet meeting flesh pierced Clara like a hot knife. Time slowed as she saw Lucas stumble, clutching at his side, pain etched on his face. Clara's instincts kicked in, overriding her fear. "Lucas," she screamed, and without thinking, she bolted toward him, propelled by sheer terror and the raw connection they had shared. "Clara, no!" Louisa yelled, horror-struck as she watched Clara rush forward. But Clara was already caught in the whirlwind, love coursing through her veins as she reached Lucas, desperate to pull him away from the onslaught. Before they could reach safety, the man who shot Lucas shifted his aim and fired again, and this time, Clara felt a painful impact against her chest. The world seared with blinding light, her knees buckled as she landed hard against the pavement. A sharp gasp escaped her lips, reality blurring around her as she struggled to comprehend what had just happened. Clara. Louisa's voice broke like thunder, panic electrifying the scene. She darted toward Clara, the chaos of gunfire ringing in her ears, and in that moment of terror, she cradled Clara's head in her lap, blood streaming from the wound. Clara's breaths came in ragged gasps, her eyes wide with shock, but as she looked up at Louisa, her gaze was still filled with love and regret. "Louisa. I'm sorry," she rasped, tears mingling with the blood. "I didn't want it to end like this. No, please, stay with me. Help is coming." Louisa wept, her heart breaking at the sight of the woman she loved collapsing. Clara's eyes fluttered, and she could barely find the words. I fought so hard. You need to keep going. Don't lose hope," Clara whispered, the warmth draining from her as her face grew pale. The sound of sirens grew faint in the distance, too late in coming. "Clara. Please. Don't leave me," Louisa cried, cupping Clara's face, trying to keep her consciousness tethered to this world, her own tears mixing with Clara's blood. But Clara's breath came slower, and the light in her eyes began to fade. In that agonizing moment, the gunfire continued in the background, a stark reminder of the chaos that still reigned outside. Louisa's sobs echoed like sirens as the chaos continued to unfold, as the streets of São Paulo became a grim canvas painted with love lost and dreams shattered. With every breath Clara took, it felt like a thread was unraveling between them, one that would soon be severed forever. "I love you, Louisa," Clara whispered weakly, her voice barely a whisper against the tumult surrounding them, her fingers loosening around Louisa's. "I love you too, Clara. Please don't go. You're the light." Louisa sobbed, the weight of the world pressing down on her, the sirens now blaring louder. In that private universe filled with pain, fear, and love, Clara's eyes fluttered shut. The world beyond dissolved into bleak silhouettes as the paramedics arrived, rushing toward them, but in that moment, Louisa felt untethered, adrift in an ocean of despair. They worked frantically to stabilize Clara, and lift her onto a stretcher, but all Louisa could do was reach for Clara's hand, grasping at the fading warmth. "You have to fight. I can't lose you, Clara," she pleaded, but as the paramedics wheeled her away, Clara slipped further and further from her grasp, darkness enveloping her like a heavy fog. In the days that followed, the thrill of art and the promise of a new life turned into a haunting void. The streets that once pulsed with vibrant colors faded into shades of gray after Clara's sudden departure. Louisa fought the sickness in her stomach, plagued by regret and sorrow, feeling the weight of the city pressing down on her as the reality of losing Clara crashed around her. In the midst of her grief, Louisa returned to the mural they had created together, a painful reminder of the beauty they had shared. She found solace in pouring her heart into their art, honoring Clara by giving voice to the pain of loss and the importance of love. Though the gang violence that had engulfed their lives hadn't ceased, Louisa's focus shifted toward prevention, advocating for change in their community, working tirelessly with nonprofits to find ways to keep other young people from spiraling into gang life and addiction. Every brushstroke was laced with the memory of Clara's smile, her laughter, and the fierce determination she had always embodied. Even amid the pain, Louisa knew that Clara's legacy, the fight for love, hope, and art, would live on, a bright and eternal flame against the darkest shadows of the streets they both had once loved. The city, with all its chaos, would never forget Clara, and neither would she. In her heart, Louisa carried the promise of their love, a testament that even amidst violence, light could still shine through the darkness. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Louisa picked up a brush, dipped it in vibrant colors, and began to paint once more, filling the world with love in Clara's honor, determined to make a difference. The days stretched into weeks after Clara's funeral, each moment weighted by an ache that seemed to grow heavier in Louisa's heart. The vibrant pieces of Clara, the laughter, the reckless courage, and the fierce love, now felt like fragments of a dream slipping through her fingers. The finality of Clara's absence consumed Louisa, leaving her to navigate a world painted in muted shades of gray. The morning of Clara's cremation dawned gray and solemn. Louisa stood among a small gathering of friends and family, the scent of incense filling the air as tears glistened like fragile diamonds in the sunlight. They shared stories and cherished memories, each heartfelt word echoing the connection they had all felt to Clara, a luminous spirit who had danced through their lives, a whirlwind of creativity marred by tumult. The moment Clara's ashes were sealed in a delicate urn, Louisa felt a shudder in her heart, a realization that Clara would forever be more than just a memory. She was a part of everything Louisa would become. She clutched the urn close, cradling it as if it were the most precious treasure, a small reservoir of Clara's essence contained within. In the days following, Louisa prepared for the journey to São Vicente, a place Clara had often spoken of with warmth, a coastal town where her family lived. The trip felt heavy but necessary. Louisa wanted to give Clara the farewell she deserved, one that honored her chaotic beauty and the struggle she had faced. As Louisa drove along the winding coastal roads, the sound of waves crashing against the rocks accompanied the weight of grief in the air. Thoughts flooded her mind of Clara, the summer nights they spent sketching beneath the stars, and the way she could turn a mundane moment into magic with just a simple laugh. When she finally arrived at Clara's family home, she was greeted with tear-streaked faces and embraces that felt like a warm blanket, albeit one tinged with sorrow. Clara's family welcomed Louisa with open arms, understanding the bond she had shared with their daughter. Together they made plans for the burial, discovering solace in the shared love they had for Clara. The day of Clara's burial was draped in a soft mist, the air thick with emotion. They drove to the peaceful cemetery overlooking the ocean, where the waves whispered the secrets of the past, urging them to remember the joy Clara once brought to the world. Louisa carried the urn with reverence as they gathered around the grave, an unmarked patch of earth transformed into a space for love, grief, and memory. As the urn was gently placed in the ground, Louisa spoke with trembling hands, her heart aching to communicate what words could scarcely express. "Clara," she began, her voice barely rising above the sound of the crashing waves. "You were so much more than the struggles we faced. You were vibrant and full of life. The world feels darker without you in it." Her voice broke, emotion clouding her vision as she glanced at Clara's family, who stood with quiet dignity, wiping tears away stealthily. "You taught me about love, about strength, and about the beauty that lies even in chaos. I promise I will carry you with me, every day. You'll never be just a memory." With each word, Louisa felt a sense of catharsis, a release of the burdens she had been carrying. She knelt by the grave, her hands trailing over the fresh soil, feeling as if she were connecting with Clara once more. "You had so many demons, but you also had a heart full of colors, a heart that brought so much beauty into this world. Even in your struggles, I will always remember you." In a moment of quiet reflection, Louisa opened the urn and, holding it close, let Clara's ashes fall gently onto the rich earth. "You will forever be part of this landscape, part of every brushstroke I make moving forward." The wind seemed to carry her words, wrapping them around the gravestone, merging them with the waves that crashed and washed over the shore. After the urn was placed and the ground filled in, they gathered close, hands interwoven, forming a ring of love around Clara's resting place. Tears flowed freely, not just from Louisa but from Clara's family as they reflected upon the life that had been lived, the battles fought, and the moments shared. "I will never forget you, Clara," Louisa whispered one last time, her voice filled with a haunting promise. "You will always live on in my heart." As they turned to leave the cemetery, Louisa felt a weight lift from her shoulders. The mix of grief and love would remain with her, shaping her into who she would become. Each step away from Clara's grave felt like a step toward healing, the waves crashing at the shore imitating the sound of hearts healing, reminding her that life continued, even amidst the pain. And as she walked toward the car, the sun broke through the clouds above, casting golden rays across the ocean, a beautiful, lingering reminder that love could transcend even death, as the colors of life blossomed anew. In her heart, Louisa promised to honor Clara's memory, carrying her spirit through every creation, every mural, and every moment of joy that life had to offer. Clara may have faced darkness, but she had also brought so much light, and that light would guide Louisa forever. Tears filled her eyes, but this time, they were tears of love. As Louisa drove away from the cemetery, the fresh scent of the ocean filled the air, and she glanced in the rearview mirror, her heart swelling with the memories of Clara. The journey they had shared would never fade. Clara would always be with her, on every canvas and in every stolen moment of beauty in her life. The bond they had formed, made powerful by love and loss, would live on, an eternal flame glowing brightly in the shadow of their intertwined fates.